You're watching All 24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune is building momentum for the Libya meeting, getting messages from his Egyptian counterpart and meeting with Tunisia's foreign minister, while Libya's leadership affirmed its readiness to cooperate. Also on our news tonight, on day 26 of the Gaza ceasefire, Zionist forces bombed the south again. 3 murders are reported, and Hamas says it rejects any foreign force taking over the Strip. Coming up as well, African and Moroccan groups reaffirm support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, calling for urgent action to end abuses against Sahrawi activists. And later on, Sudan criticizes international inaction on RSF crimes while diplomats praise Algeria's supportive stance. Its defense council calls for a general mobilization to eliminate the militia. Welcome back to the program. First up in our news tonight, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune received Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelhati on Wednesday, who conveyed a written message from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The meeting, attended by senior Algerian officials, reflected the two countries' shared commitment to strengthening bilateral cooperation. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune received Tunisian Foreign Minister Mohamed Ali Nafti on Wednesday in a meeting that underscored the deep ties and ongoing coordination between the two neighboring countries. Senior Algerian officials also attended the talks. Libya's Presidential Council head Mohammed Yunus al-Menfi sent a message to President Abdelmadjid Tebboune reaffirming his commitment to strengthening the historic ties between Libya and Algeria. In his message, al-Menfi also congratulated President Tebboune on the anniversary of the Algerian War of Independence, wishing continued progress and prosperity for the Algerian people. Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf met with his Egyptian counterpart Badr Abdelhati on Wednesday evening in Algiers for talks aimed at strengthening bilateral relations. The meeting, which included members of both delegations, reviewed the progress of cooperation between Algeria and Egypt and explored ways to deepen it ahead of the upcoming 9th session of the Joint Higher Committee in Cairo, in line with the vision of presidents of both countries. The two ministers also discussed the latest developments in the occupied Palestinian territories, praising Algeria's role within the UN Security Council and Egypt's efforts to organize an international conference for Gaza's reconstruction. According to a statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry, they further exchanged views on key Arab and African issues, including the situations in Libya and Sudan, as well as developments in the Sahel region. Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf met with his Tunisian counterpart Mohamed Ali Nafti in Algiers on Wednesday ahead of the tripartite meeting of Libya's neighboring countries. The talks focused on strengthening bilateral cooperation and advancing preparations for the 23rd session of the Algerian-Tunisian Joint High Commission. Both ministers also reviewed regional developments and reaffirmed the shared commitment of Presidents Abdelmadjid Tebboune and Qais Said to deepening partnership and integration between the two nations. Algiers will host on Thursday a meeting of the tripartite mechanism for Libya's neighboring countries to discuss efforts aimed at advancing a consensual political solution that ends Libya's long-standing division and paves the way for elections to resolve the country's years-long crisis. Hossein Burkan has more.
Amid renewed calls from the United Nations for all Libyan parties to end political fragmentation, advance the peace process, unify national institutions, and hold elections, the tripartite mechanism reconvenes in Algiers. The meeting, taking place nearly 5 months after the Cairo session, will see the participation of the foreign ministers of Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt, countries that share borders, history, and deep concern for Libya's stability, and that stress the importance of prioritizing the interests of the Libyan people, safeguarding national resources, and fostering consensus among all actors. Proposed by Algeria, the tripartite mechanism stems from its firm belief in Libya's capacity to rebuild through dialogue and reconciliation. Algeria has consistently urged the Libyan parties to resolve their differences through inclusive dialogue and to reject foreign interference, which has only deepened the political security crisis. Central to the initiative is the principle of a Libyan solution, one driven by the will, ownership, and consensus of the Libyan people themselves. Supported by the United Nations and its mission in Libya, with neighboring countries serving as facilitators and partners rather than decision makers. Recognizing that no sustainable solution can be achieved amid external interference, the tripartite mechanism reiterates its call for the withdrawal of the foreign forces, fighters, and mercenaries from Libyan soil. This demand, long advocated by Algeria, is viewed as essential to restoring Libya's sovereignty and unifying its military and security institutions. It aligns with UN and African Union efforts that see a stable, united, and strong Libya as a cornerstone of peace, stability, and development across North Africa and the wider continent.
Algeria on Wednesday inaugurated a memorial in La'youn in At-Tarif province honoring Russian soldiers who took part in clearing mines left behind by the French colonialism. The ceremony, held on behalf of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, was presided over by Interior Minister Said Sayyoud in the presence of Russian Ambassador, retired Colonel Andrei Pavlenko, and local civil and military officials. A wreath was laid at the site in tribute to the winners' sacrifices. In his address, Interior Minister Said Sayyoud expressed Algeria's deep appreciation for Russia's support in clearing the remnants of colonialism along the Charles and Maurice lines after independence. He said Russian soldiers have earned a lasting place in the collective memory of Algerians, adding that the new memorial stands as a symbol of the enduring friendship between Algeria and Russia.
Thanks to your contribution, you have engraved your name in the individual and collective memory of the Algerian people, a contribution that we hold in the highest esteem and gratitude, from the highest levels of the state to the general public, who bear witness to the nobility of your commitment and your assistance by placing your expertise in mine clearance at the service of national operations undertaken by Algeria along the Charles and Maurice lines. Your nomination by the President of the Republic for the National Order of Merit, Order of Ashir, embodies the nobility of this recognition and the gratitude that the Algerian state and people both extend to you.
For his part, retired Russian Colonel Andrei Pavlenko hailed the new Algeria as the fruit of its people's struggle and the sacrifices of the revolution's heroes against French colonialism. He also expressed his joy at meeting President Abdelmadjid Tebboune during his visit.
The new Algeria you are living in today came thanks to the Algerian people who fought for freedom. I bow in reverence to the sacrifices made by the men and women of this nation, especially those who led the revolution and struggled against the colonizer. Until independence was achieved, we carried out a mission after independence, and I had the honor of taking part in the removal of the remnant of colonialism. I still remember my first reception in Algeria. It was a very warm welcome. Today, I am happy to be received by President Tebboune. It was truly an honor for me. He represents a devoted son of the Algerian people and the Algerian state.
And in the Gaza file tonight, Zionist occupation forces carried out new demolition operations across several areas of the Strip on Wednesday morning. Local sources reported intense airstrikes on the towns of Bani Suhaila and Abbasan, east of Khan Yunis, while artillery bombardments and large-scale demolitions were also recorded east of Rafah in southern Gaza. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza reported on Wednesday that 3 Palestinians were killed in the past 24 hours, including 1 newly identified victim and 2 recovered from the rubble. 2 others were injured during the same period, bringing the death toll since the Gaza ceasefire's announcement on October 11 to 221. Hamas leader Musa Abu Marzouk said it would be difficult for the UN Security Council to approve the US proposal to deploy an international force in Gaza. He noted that mediators insist such a force must be established under a Security Council mandate, stressing that all Palestinian factions agree security in Gaza should remain under Palestinian control, led by the committee administering the Strip. Moving on to another news story, the Organization of African Trade Union Unity reaffirmed its unequivocal support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence, urging the international community to end this stalemate and uphold UN and African Union principles. In a statement Wednesday, it expressed solidarity with the Sahrawi workers, stressing that Western Sahara remains an unfinished decolonization process.
The Organization of African Trade Union Unity, true to its legacy of struggle against colonialism and to its founding charter and principles of solidarity, justice and freedom for peoples, it expresses its steadfast support for Sahrawi workers and for the Sahrawi people in their legitimate struggle for freedom and independence. The organization emphasized that Western Sahara remains a non-self-governing territory and that the process of decolonization on the continent is yet to be completed. The organization further recalled that the UN Charter, the International Principle of Decolonization, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights all affirm the primacy of the right to self-determination as a fundamental condition for freedom and peace.
Similarly, the organization voiced deep concern over the continued disregard of the Polisario Front's proposals to the UN Secretary General, describing it as a violation of the UN and African Peace Plan.
The organization expressed its deep concern over the systematic disregard of the proposals submitted by the Polisario Front, the sole and legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people, to the UN Secretary General. The organization stated that such disregard contradicts both the UN and African peace plans, as well as the principles of justice and respect for international law. It further urged the United Nations to ensure a fair and inclusive political process that guarantees the full participation of the Polisario Front in all negotiations concerning the future of Western Sahara, stressing that any solution outside the framework of international legitimacy will not be acceptable.
The Moroccan Democratic Workers' Path Party reaffirmed its firm support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination following its third National Council meeting in Rabat. In a statement issued after the session, the party reiterated its 2022 Congress position, calling for a just resolution to the Western Sahara conflict through genuine dialogue and adherence to relevant international resolutions.
The Democratic Labour Way Party reaffirms its firm position in support of the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. The party calls for resolving the Western Sahara conflict on the basis of this right and for opening a serious dialogue grounded in the relevant international resolutions in order to spare the region further suffering and pave the way for democratic solutions and the unity of Maghreb peoples. The Democratic Labour Way Party stresses that the pursuit of peace cannot come at the expense of justice in resolving the conflict, affirming that self-determination is not a mere slogan, but a fundamental condition for coexistence among peoples based on freedom, equality, and dignity.
The Coordination Mechanism for Struggle Action in Occupied Layun urged the UN, the Human Rights Council, and press freedom organizations to act swiftly against escalating Moroccan repression targeting journalists and activists in occupied Western Sahara. The group condemned what it called a brutal assault on Sahrawi journalists, Brika Bahi, following the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2797 as part of a broader pattern of systematic violations by the Moroccan occupation.
Sahrawi activist Brika Bahi was assaulted by members of the Moroccan occupation police in a retaliatory attack that took place immediately after the issuance of the UN resolution. The assault involved several notorious agents of the occupation known for their past involvement in repressing activists and journalists. The attack included severe beatings, insults, and humiliation in a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and the most basic principles of human dignity, underscoring the retaliatory and politically motivated nature of the occupation's policy towards Sahrawi journalists.
The Sudanese government accused the international community of enabling further atrocities in Al-Fashir through its silence over the Rapid Support Forces' ongoing violations. Speaking at a press conference in Algiers, Sudanese Embassy Chargé d'Affaires Khalid Hassan al-Naim held the international community fully responsible for the crimes committed by the RSF, saying they flagrantly defy UN resolutions and basic human rights.
There is a UN Security Council resolution, Resolution 2736, issued in June 2024, which calls for lifting the siege on Al-Fashir and allowing civilians to leave. Unfortunately, the militias disregard this resolution. Those who support them are essentially providing them with a political cover. And Sudan failed to warn the world of the dangers of this inaction until this tragedy occurred. We maintain that if the international community had fulfilled its responsibility, this would not have happened.
Sudanese diplomat Khalid Hassan al-Naim said his government is urging the International Criminal Court to summon the leaders of the Rapid Support Forces, holding them primarily responsible for the crimes committed in Al-Fashir and other parts of Sudan.
This is a clear evidence of human rights violations, including genocide, ethnic cleansing, and premeditated murder. This criminal act requires nothing more than summoning the militia, its leaders, and those behind it. We know that the international law holds the head of any organization, whether terrorist or criminal, primarily responsible for the violations that occur. We expect international organizations to demand the arrest and trial of these militia leaders. This evidence, including these scenes, is irrefutable proof filmed by the militia itself.
The Sudanese government praised Algeria's steadfast support for Sudan's security and territorial integrity. Speaking at a press conference in Algiers, Sudanese Chargé d'Affaires Khalid al-Naim highlighted the historic ties between the two nations and expressed gratitude to President Abdelmadjid Tebboune and Algeria's UN mission for their continued backing of the Sudanese people and their stability.
We thank some friendly and brotherly countries that have maintained principled stances respecting international law. Foremost among these, in our view, is Algeria. When this war broke out, Algeria was chairing the Arab League Council. When the Arab Summit was held in Algeria in 2022, and again in 2023, Algeria was chairing the Arab League Council. On the eve of the war, the Algerian president issued a statement supporting Sudan and called upon international organizations to assist Sudan in ending this war and saving the Sudanese people. We're always grateful to Algeria for its assistance and support for Sudan, as well as to Algeria's permanent representative to the Security Council, Benjama. He continued to provide data on the A3 group, and its support remains steadfast. Sudan supporting Sudan, maintaining its security, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity.
Still with Sudan's related news, the Sudanese Security and Defense Council, chaired by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, urged continued mobilization to eliminate the Rapid Support Forces. The Defense Minister Hassan Dawood reaffirmed his government's commitment to ensuring humanitarian access, promoting stability, and supporting all efforts aimed at achieving peace and ending the suffering of the Sudanese people.
The Council called for the mobilization of the Sudanese people to support the armed forces in eliminating the rebel militia. within the framework of the state's general efforts to end this rebellion. The Sudanese government's vision is to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid, support humanitarian hope, and restore security and peace throughout Sudan. It welcomed sincere efforts calling for an end to the suffering of the Sudanese people caused by the rebellion of the terrorist militia of Dagalo.
التي سببها تمرد ميليشيا آل دغلو الإرهابية.
The Sudan Liberation Army, led by Mustafa Tambour, renewed its call for all factions to join forces with the National Army to reclaim the entire country. Speaking to All 24 News, SLA spokesperson Inshirah Ali Qadoum Al-Ghali urged unity against the Rapid Support Forces, stressing that national interest must come before all divisions.
نؤكد أن مصلحة السودان وأمن شعبه فوق كل اعتبار.
Noble Sudanese people, our country is passing through a critical stage that requires us all to rise to the level of national responsibility. We, in the Sudan Liberation Movement, under the leadership of General Mustafa Tambour, affirm that the interests of Sudan and the security of its people are paramount, and that there is no way forward for us except through genuine national unity. The unity of the army in all its components and the people's support for it are the fundamental pillars for protecting humanity and preserving its dignity.
تكمن في تماسك صفوفنا وإخلاص نوايانا.
To another topic on news story, and in a landmark political moment for the United States and beyond, 34-year-old Muslim immigrant Zahra Mamdani won the Democratic Party race for mayor of New York City, securing over 50% of the vote against his rival Andrew Cuomo, who received 41.3%. Nabil Khazin reports.
Across New York City last morning, every front page carried the same headline: Mamdani, the new mayor. It is the story everyone's talking about. A political newcomer who has just rewritten US history. Zahra Mamdani, 34 years old, will become the city's youngest mayor in more than a century. Its first Muslim mayor and its first born in Africa. When Mamdani entered the race last year, he had almost no name recognition, little funding, and no institutional party backing. But he built a grassroots campaign focused on communities and ordinary New Yorkers.
I'm so proud to be standing here today as the mayor-elect of the greatest city in the world. Over 2 million New Yorkers cast their ballots. Whether they were the more than million who supported this campaign or the others who supported someone else, or whether they felt too disappointed by the political process to participate at all, I will work every day to honor the trust that I now hold.
But as the city awoke to a new political reality, US President Donald Trump framed the moment as a turning point. He said New York City had lost its sovereignty, and if the city's compass had spun away from his vision.
If you want to see what congressional Democrats wish to do to America, just look at the result of yesterday's election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor of the largest city in the nation. Remember, I've said we will never have a socialist elected to any post in our country. I used to say that, and I was right. We skipped socialist and we put in a communist instead.
As Mamdani celebrated his historic win, conversations across New York turned to what lay ahead. New Yorkers wondered how his leadership would shape a metropolis already on edge, anticipating clashes with Donald Trump.
I'm not a Mamdani guy. I'm not a Cuomo guy either. I usually vote. I wasn't that excited about either candidate. With that said, I wish Mamdani the best. I think there's a lot of people that don't live in New York that are really excited to call this a communist city and all this stuff that's completely ridiculous. New York will be fine.
It really didn't surprise me because the younger population is for him, And even though a lot of people have called him a radical, I don't think he's a radical. He has different views, that people appreciated, people went for.
With his victory secured, Mamdani steps into City Hall at a moment full of expectation and uncertainty. New York now faces a turning point, its future shaped by both his vision and the challenges that await.
White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt voiced confidence in the legality of President Trump's tariff policies, describing them as vital for national security and economic leverage. The U.S. Supreme Court is set to review the tariffs this week, which Leavitt said form a key part of Trump's economic strategy and contribute to advancing peace agreements. And that's the end of our news program for tonight. To catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.